So every year, the first thing we do is we meet and we talk about the basic principles of dressage. How many of you guys have been to Horse Mastership Week before, where we've done this? So about a third of you. And so I've done this every year, and the reason for that is because I have found that even with adults who've been doing dressage for many years, it's not always the case that they understand or truly know all of the basic principles that the art and then the sport later was derived from. So I think it's really important that we don't take anything for granted, and so I spend about 45 minutes to an hour going through the basic principles, where they come from and why things work the way they work. The basic principles of the art of dressage, they go back how many years? When did dressage first start getting taught and used? Do you know? You guys, either of you?
A long time.
A long time?
Very long
like
time.
More than 1,000 years?
Yes.
More than 2,000 years?
No.
It's so fitting right now because we're right at this time of year. It happened yesterday, which was, what was yesterday?
Christmas.
Christmas. And Christmas has to do with what figure in history? What's the person that was the person that became the son of somebody?
Jesus?
Yeah. And so before his birth, which is over 2,000 years ago, right? Before his birth, there was a guy whose name, do you guys, anybody know his name? Yeah. Xenophon, in the time of Socrates, who decided that after seeing horses running around in the field and rearing up and striking out and doing all those things, that using those abilities that the horse has in warfare would be an amazingly helpful thing as opposed to just walking on foot. So they started the first school of dressage to prepare their armies to go into battle with these animals that could do all of these things, not only transport them, but be able to move forward and sideways at the same time, knock their opponents over, rear up and then leap out and kick them and strike out at them. All of those things came from then this guy and then that first school of dressage. And dressage means in French is the word for training, okay? So I'll help you out a little bit more. Then over the centuries, the many centuries, dressage was used to not only then go from warfare into, in the 15th century, it was used in these things called Ross or horse ballets to for the king and queen, amuse them with music, and they would have these quadrilles, and they would do all of this dance on horseback around inside of the castles, okay? And then we had it going forward, and we know what the Spanish riding school is. That's hundreds of years old. And then it was taken in the very first Olympics in London into the modern Olympics, as well as having been in the ancient Olympics 2,000 years ago. And dressage then moved forward into modern games, and it's been there ever since as a sport. Okay? So now, let's talk about what it is about. Dressage has to do with, in the animal, creating energy, capturing the energy, recirculating it through the horse, and then directing that energy into all of the various movements that we see and balances that we see in the arena in dressage, okay? So it's the creation of energy, the capture of that energy, and then the directing of that energy into all these different directions. That's what it is on an energetic level. So how does it work? Like, what's the first thing, Kerrigan?
Like, in the training scale?
Yeah, what is the first thing that you have to do once a horse is broke, so he's now under saddle? What does he first need to do before he can learn to do anything else? What's the first requirement that all horses must do before they learn to do anything else? Either of you.
Well,
They have to go how? They have to go forward. So now start teaching. What does forward mean? What does it mean? What does it require?
It requires them to be moving forward on their own, asking them every single time to have a nice, especially in the walk, a nice overtrack. So they should be really reaching with their hind end and moving throughout their body.
How do you make them go
use your-
forward?
You can use your seat, your legs, and, well, right leg, left leg, and your seat.
Okay, so talk to me. Those are called, that's a set of what? It's a
Natural
set
aids.
of natural what aids?
Driving aids.
Driving aids. Those are the 3 driving aids.
Yeah.
So how do you know that they're the 3 driving aids? So now you guys are answering questions like I would be asking you. Here's what I want you to do. Stop answering questions to me, and now start teaching them. So this is you guys are the professionals and the trainers of the future. I want you to sort of take over, and instead of answering questions from me, you can say, hey, I can take this, or I can take the microphone, but I want you to now teach the lesson, okay? So now we're this far. I said we have the set of driving aids to go forward, it's the first requirement, and I'm still teaching the lesson. Now, you guys have to teach the lesson. There are 3 driving aids we just said, and I want to know, I'm the person out there, I want to know why, and how do you know they are, versus if you ask them, because that's what I always do, right? I ask them, what are the 3 driving aids? And then you hear the answers, and then you come up with solutions, okay? That's why I said, I don't know how long until you're back at the barn getting your horse ready. So this is the whole point of it, though. Okay, do you want it to talk?
Sure. Okay, so
You're teaching them.
let's start with the leg. So obviously the leg is in a good place to ask them to go forward. Say if you would use your hands to ask them to go forward, that'd be counterproductive, right? You're holding onto their head, doesn't work like that. But also, so when you use your leg, the forward driving aid, if you use them both at the same time, normally it's just right by the girth, that's the best area. And it helps to create the motion starting from the hind end, and you can push that into your hands, which helps to bring it throughout the whole body. And also, using your leg, it can not only be forward within the gait, but through different gaits. So you can move your legs around, say for the canter, if you're going to the left, inside leg of the girth, outside leg behind it. It guides them in that way to go forward in a transition. So.
Kerrigan, you want to add to that?
Sure. Do you want to take this? Okay.
Yeah.
For me, I feel like the most important thing is that the horse is going forward without having to constantly nag the horse or beg for everything you want. And that can come from just using your legs effectively and being conscious of what they're doing. And if you need a little extra leg, use it, and then it has to come off, so they learn from the beginning that that's what you're asking for. And then that carries over into everything you do as you move up the levels.
Anybody have any questions about that? You don't? Because I do. Okay.
If you're going forward with if you're using your legs as a driving aid, you sort of think of your legs as a channel and think the horse is going through the channel.
Did you guys hear that? If you're a trainer of the future, you better make yourself heard from everybody, right? Like I put this down here, and I bet you guys can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so now say that again loud. What?
So if you're using your legs as a sort of, as a your legs are a driving aid, can you think of your legs as a channel and the horse is going through that channel as he's going forward? That's kind of how I think of the median shot.
Okay, so it's how you're using your driving aids. Okay. We'll get back to that in a minute. Anybody else have any questions about what these two have said about the driving aids? No? Yeah?
Can they elaborate more on the seat?
Right. Okay. So, and then, did anybody think that there were any other driving aids other than what Kerrigan said, the two legs and the seat? Yeah? Yeah. The hands. Did anybody else think that there were any? Remember when I taught it, I always asked everybody, what do you think are the 3 driving aids? Or what do you think are the driving aids? And I would say there are 3 natural ones. And then they would answer, and I would hear hands. Were there any other thoughts about any other driving aids? The voice? Any others? Okay, the voice and the hands. What do you think about that, you guys? The voice and the hands.
The voice can definitely be used as a driving aid. Obviously, you can't use it in the test, but you know.
So what does that make it if it's not useful in the
It's
show?
just purely for training.
What is it called then?
What's it called? I don't know.
What do you think it'd be called? You said the word before, natural aids.
Is it artificial?
Okay.
I mean, I would
And
think
very
that.
important, but
Yeah,
still, it's
still not.
useful. So what would be another artificial driving aid that you can't,
Whip.
right? The whip would be also another aid that can help you to go, but you can't use it, for instance, in the international test, right? So it's not one that we call one of the 3 natural aids. And then now I heard the voice, of course, and then we heard the hands. So then what did I do? What did I put forward to people over the last years as a hypothesis? Do you remember what that word means? It's an educated guess. And I said, an aid has to prove, do you remember that? An aid has to prove that it is an aid within the set of aids that you're talking about. Right now we're talking about the set of driving aids, by virtue of the fact that it must independently or by itself produce at least partially that quality that you desire within the horse. Is that fair to everybody? Okay? So then, if we say, don't use any seat, don't use any legs, now show me you can push the horse forward with your hands. Think about yourselves on your horse right now. You have no legs, no seat. Can you push the horse forward with your hands? Can you? No. So the hands are disqualified. They're not a driving aid. But we said now that we still had these 3 aids that Kerrigan brought up. She said the inside leg, the outside leg, and if you just used your inside leg, if you just kicked your horse or your pony, you think it would go forward at least a little bit? You're right, it would. And the same with your outside leg. And then, now we're going to get back to talking about the seat. So, the seat right now, are we sitting with an active driving seat right now? All of us? No, you're sitting passively. That's one of the ways the seat can be. Now let's talk, you guys, about the driving seat. What's the driving seat? How do you make it happen? What is it? How does it work?
So the driving seat, if you're sitting on your horse, you shouldn't be in front of the vertical or behind. You can be close to behind, but you shouldn't be. You should be in balance with the horse and kind of sitting into them and thinking of kind of pushing your hips almost forward with them to drive them forward and encourage them to move forward.
Anything more than that? How do you start making your seat into a driving seat in the way you are facing? What do you begin with?
Well, you have to have some sort of momentum forward. If the horse isn't going to go forward, then you can't really have a forward driving seat. You can try to push with your seat, but it won't look very good.
Okay. What's the first thing that makes your muscles tighten?
Your core.
How? Okay, you guys go sit down. Take your chairs back. Next year we're gonna try this again. We don't have enough time to do this way. So next year we're gonna try this again. And I'm going to wager that whoever comes back next year is going to have said this after writing it down today about 400,000 times, and then is going to come back here and be able to verbatim. This was just a test for me, just to see how impactful this 1 hour is, okay? And what I can tell is you guys are really good at riding and really smart people, but I can also tell that maybe this hour is not getting to you in a way that I hoped. And I'll just tell you that my own mentor, and actually Lendon's from many, many years ago, he taught me this when we were both kids. And he actually said to me before he went home to Sweden one time that I was going to be responsible for teaching this because my colleagues who were at that time training with him would forget. Lendon hasn't forgotten, but I will wager that the majority of them have. So I felt responsible for teaching this ever since. How do you begin taking your seats right now from being passive, that you're sitting in a chair, to activating them? How do you activate your body? How do I activate my arm right now? Like, what has to be inside of my muscles to be able to move, to use my muscles? What has to go to my muscles? What? Oxygen. So you take in a breath, oxygenating your lungs, then sends oxygen through your bloodstream to your muscles, which feeds your muscles and then makes you able to act, right? That's the same with every sport and most arts, okay? So we begin every new movement in our bodies by breathing in, taking in a breath, and then if you were on a swing, do you remember this, Kerrigan, too? If you were on a swing, right? As a little kid, before you could even touch the ground and you were next to your friend, you said, I'm going to race you to the top. And you would, without even knowing it, every time you would go backwards this way on the swing, you'd take in a breath. And every time you would breathe out, you would push the swing forward without even being able to touch the ground to push off. But you would push, like in a pumping action, the swing forward. You would push like you were pushing the back of the swing toward the front of the swing. Do you remember that? Just like this. And in doing that, look, I couldn't touch the ground, but my chair just moved. And the horse is a very sensitive being, so sensitive that they can feel a little fly or a mosquito land on their body and just twitch the muscle and skin underneath it, right? So that's how sensitive they are. When you push like this, they go, oh my, because they're an animal of flight, remember? They run when they're either afraid or when they're not sure what's going, they run. So we teach them to move forward by this motion of our seat pushing forward after having breathed in. That breath in tightens all of the muscles from your stomach up through your chest, throwing your shoulders backwards as your lungs expand, and then down your back into the small of your back into the sitting bones. That's called a braced back or a braced seat or a stilled seat, okay? We brace the seat, and then we, in this pushing action, like pushing the cantle of the saddle toward the pommel of the saddle, we drive the horse forward. That's the third of the three driving aids. And with each of those driving aids, once the animal has learned to move forward from them, we relax them, okay? So we're not constantly, like Kerrigan said, we don't want to constantly be nagging or pushing the horse. We push, they respond, we reward. Good boy, good girl. And then we fine-tune that until by the time the animal is very well trained, just breathing in and pushing our weight down our heels, the horse knows what's going to happen next if they don't go forward, so they start going forward off of that that feeling. You got it? Once a horse has learned to go forward off the driving aids, they have to learn to go in another way. A second requirement has to be met in order for them to go on in their training. Do you have any idea what that's called, the second requirement that they have to learn before they go on up the training scale? Anybody know? Well, you're right, that's the set of aids, but it's to create a quality in them. It's called the quality of straightness. Straightness means their ability to overlap the line that they're moving along, such that if you looked from the sky over them, they'd look exactly like the straight line or the bent line that they're going along, right? So that their hind feet are always following in the tracks of their front feet on the same side. They're a segment of the line that they're overlapping. You got that? So now that means what you just said is that in order to be a straight horse, they have to be a bent horse. In order to be a bent horse, we need a set of aids to bend them. That's the set of bending aids. And there are 3 bending aids that are natural, just like there were 3 driving aids. You guys, what would be the 3 bending aids? Legs. You said, I'm sorry? Inside and outside leg, okay. So we're separating those into 2 separate ones. And then the third one? Yeah. Inside rein. Anybody else have any other thoughts? Yeah. Outside rein. Anybody else have any other thoughts for bending aids? Nope. Nobody else have any other thoughts? Okay, so outside rein. Let's go back to our hypothesis. Remember, an aid has to prove that's an aid within the set of aids by virtue of the fact that it must independently be able to at least partially create that quality that you desire within the horse. What's your name? Nick. Okay, so Nick, you're not now allowed to use your legs at all, and you've dropped your inside rein. You're going around to the left. Your outside rein would then be the right rein. You can pull your right rein really hard right now. Is your horse going to bend to the left? No. So that shows that the outside rein has no function in the creation of bend to the inside. Okay? So now it still left us with 3 aids that these guys brought up. The inside leg, the outside leg, the inside rein, and those are the 3 bending aids. The inside leg is put where, you guys? At the girth. Everybody always gets that right? And the girth is not just the strap that's holding the saddle on, it's the area of the horse under which we are sitting. Okay? And why then would we be using our inside leg at the girth in order to begin bending this rectangular animal? Why? Because it's what? It's the center of what? It's a center of gravity of the horse, right? Center of his balance. So if it's a center of balance, then it makes sense to be changing his balance at the center of balance, right? And because he's this rectangular animal, then what will happen if we just apply pressure with our inside leg near the girth to his butt if we do nothing else? What will happen with his hindquarters? It'll swing out. So what do we do then with our outside leg? We bring it slightly behind the girth, and that's used as a barrier to prevent his hindquarters from swinging out. Now we have him bent from the girth backwards, but we want him to be bent equally from the girth forward. So with our inside hand, we close into a fist, thereby bringing the head and neck into the bend that we've created in the animal's trunk of his body from our legs. And once he bends his head and neck to the inside, then we, just like with our legs, we relax that aid. So we bend, and then we relax that aid once the horse is bent until we need more bend. Does that make sense? Okay, so now we have the horses moving forward from the driving aids, bent from the bending aids, but now we have a problem. Does anybody know what that problem would be? Say we go out onto a circle on our horses. Imagine you guys are on your horses, and you go out on a circle with your horses, and you have 0 outside rein. You throw it away. You pick up your inside rein tight, and you use your driving aids and your bending aids, and then you say you use them harder. What's the horse going to want to do?
Follow through the outside shoulder.
Maybe. Fall out onto the outside shoulder. What else? Maybe. What else? You're using your driving aids as hard as you can. What do you think the horse is going to want to do? Sorry? You think it's going to go straight? You're using your bending aids as hard as you can. Inside leg on the girth, outside leg behind the girth, inside rein. Both legs and your seat as hard as you can. Go ahead. So haunches might come way in. What else? He's going to go around in circles. You think he's going to go the same speed? You're using your driving aids as hard as you can. What is he going to go the same speed? What's he going to do? Strung out? Probably. What else? He's going to do what? He's using your driving aids as hard as you can. You just, what? He's going to speed up. He's going to speed up, and most probably he's going to go around. If you're using your outside leg behind the earth, inside leg on the earth, and pulling the inside rein tight, he's going to do one of two things. He's going to either go around in circles faster and faster, like this, or somebody said he's going to throw his shoulder out. He'd bend this far and go that way, like I've seen a lot of thoroughbreds do really fast. Either way, you've created an uncontrollable amount of speed from the driving aids and an uncontrollable amount of bend from the bending aids. You got that? So that means there has to be one set of aids, or one aid that is a set by itself, left at our disposal that regulates the amount of speed from the driving aids and bend from the bending aids. What do you think that last aid is that we didn't use just now? The outside rein. The outside rein has a name. It's called the aid or the rein of opposition. Because, and you guys all know what opposition means, to oppose, to go against. And that's because it opposes too much speed from the driving aids by closing into a fist. While you're driving, you say, yeah, I didn't say you could go faster than this guy. Or by closing into a fist. When you're bending the horse, you say, yeah, girl, but you're not allowed to bend more than this amount. And the horse, listening to that outside rein in a fist, goes, okay, I'll yield to that fist, and says, okay, I won't speed up more than this. I won't bend more than you're saying. You got that? And then, just like the other aids, the horse responds to that aid, and you relax that aid till the next time you use it. You need it. All right, so now we have this incredible package of aids. We have the set of driving aids, 2 legs and the seat, the set of bending aids, 2 legs and the inside rein, and the third of the 3 sets of aids by itself, it's a set, the aid or the rein of opposition. And now we have an amazing ability to say, go forward, but not too fast. And then with the young horse, we're starting to create a sense of rhythm and tempo. Okay? We also have the ability to say, bend, but don't bend too much. And through that, we create this quality called straightness. And from just those 3 qualities that we're gaining in this young horse, of a sense of rhythm, a sense of tempo, a sense of straightness on straight lines and being bent on bent lines, we begin creating the horse's natural balance as it's moving along underneath us. And when a horse becomes balanced, something that is in horses when they are unbalanced, what happens with the horse when it's unbalanced? What does it do mostly when you see it unbalanced? What do you think? Yeah. Well, it falls onto its form, but how do they show that they're unbalanced? Like, what do they do? Maybe they buck, maybe, yeah, what else? What do they do? What are their 2 balancing poles? Their head and their neck, and what's the other balancing pole that a horse has? Because you see them a lot. You see them do it a lot when they're unbalanced, or what do you think is their other balancing pole? It's at the other end. What is it? Their tail. So when a tail goes up or down or swishes, that's their other end of their other balancing pole. Head and neck at one end. And so because we're bipeds, right? When you see a baby learning to walk, do they walk like this? When a baby learns to walk, what do? like this, right? Or if we put you up on the railing right there, you do that too, right? Or that's why you see those poles and people that are on the high wire. Okay, those are their balancing poles. So what happens is, naturally, as the baby gets a little older and they're able to balance better, their arms are used less and they can walk like this, unless they're put up on that railing, and then all of a sudden we're like this again, trying to stay up, right? And then you see the gymnast who's been on that balancing pole for so many years that the whole idea is that they walk along it like this, and then they do things like this, and then they leap up, go over backwards, come down like this, and then you'll see them maybe go like that for a second, but they try not to, because it's points deducted from the performance if they look like they're unbalanced. You got that? So now, guys, we come to the next part of this, which is how do we then go from this animal that's now learning to balance itself to helping it to remain perfectly balanced all the time, because that's what dressage has the aim of doing. So we say to ourselves, we're going to go from different looks, in different bends, in different shapes, through different movements. Each one requires a different balance for itself, okay? And our idea is to create a perfect state of balance and attention. Remember that, okay? So now, in order to go from the walk to the trot, let's say, if we go from the walk to the trot, the center of gravity, the center of balance of the horse is going to want to go which direction? Which way? Forward. So that's the same. Look, I'm standing still right now, okay? And if I had a basket of fruit and I was living in Africa, or if I had any kind of a big tin of water and I was living in some place where I couldn't have something to put it on, where would I put it in order to carry it the most effective way? On my head, because then it's right over my center of gravity. That's why we sit right behind the withers of a horse. That's their center of gravity, over the girth area, okay? So now, we know that as the animal goes faster forward, its center of gravity goes forward. We want to create a center of gravity that doesn't keep shifting back and forth. Like if you're riding a hunter or a jumper, you're going to keep moving forward over the center of gravity. The horse goes over the jump, we go way forward. The horse comes down, we come back into the saddle some. But we're always shifting to their center of gravity. Dressage has the aim of creating a perfect center of gravity underneath our seat that stays like this, where we, with invisible aids, produce a center of gravity underneath us that doesn't keep shifting all the time by its nature, all right? So now, we say we're going to go faster. We're going to go walk to trot. Here's what we do. We say, well, the center of gravity is going to go 10% more forward when we go from the walk to the trot by the nature of physics. In order to bring the center of gravity into a place where it's going to be the same when we go into the trot, we have to figure out what to do. And here's what we do. We take in our breath. Breathe in, you guys, right now. Sit up. Do you feel yourself get taller? Okay, take in the breath, go taller. You're going to now drive with your two legs, and you're going around to the left. Your inner leg's at the girth, your outer leg is behind the girth. You're doing your usual job of keeping the bend of the head and neck to the left, consistent with the bend that you've created in the horse's body. And now you're going to say, I'm going to drive you, but at that same second, I'm going to close my outside hand into a fist. And I'm going to close an imaginary door that open would let you do the two things that we said that the horse would want to do, and that's speed up and bend more, right? But now closed into a fist says the door's closing, and the horse goes, oh, I know what that means. I yield to that action of the fist. But as he yields to the action of the fist, he's still being driven, isn't he? So as the door is being closed here, what do you think he's going to do with his hind legs if he's still being driven? What will his hind legs do? They're going to go under. In going under, how do they go under without then treading over the front legs? What do? Well, yeah, but when you say their hind legs go under, do they go under like this with a straight hind leg? What do they do more? They bend their hocks. What about the other joints? They bend all the joints in their hind legs more. So if they bend their joints in their hind legs more, what happens to their croup? It goes down. If their croup goes down, sorry? Okay, I will get her. Okay. If their croup goes down, what's going to happen to their front end? Okay? If their front end goes elevated, but they're, remember, yielding to the action of the outside hand into a fist, right? So, the front end goes up, but they're still arched and round in that moment, aren't they? So it goes up from the withers and the shoulders. And as that happens, then what happens to the center of gravity of the horse? The center of gravity goes where? So, you've driven, the front end goes up. Where's the center of gravity going? Backward. Okay? As the center of gravity goes backward, you say about 10% of his weight shifts backward over his haunch. Now, remember, we're going from the walk to the trot. So in that second, as the center of gravity has gone backwards, you're dictating through your seat and leg, go forward to the trot. 10% of his weight is going to now shift back forward. So wait a minute, you breathed in, close your legs, close your fist, 10% of the weight's gone backwards. In that second, you've driven and dictated to the horse to go to the trot. He goes to the trot, 10% goes forward. Where are we? Exactly where we were in the perfect walk. You get that? So that's the beauty of all of this, is that we breathe in, close legs, close fist. We create the displacement of the center of gravity further back, and in that second we create the new thing that is in our mind of what we want to create, and we'll talk about that in a second too. And then the horse does that which we desire, and then we usher them through by relaxing that driving seat back into a passive seat again, and relaxing that closed fist back into a relaxed hand, that then opens the doorway back up and ushers him through this doorway in a perfect state of balance and attention. And that, you guys, is called what? Say it loud. That's called the half-halt. The half-halt is the bringing of the horse to a perfect state of balance and attention through the marriage of the three sets of aids that we have in the length of time of, what is it? A complete breath. Breathe in, breathe out. That's the length of a half-halt. Hopefully. It can be shorter in the horse that's really well trained. It can be a little longer, say 3 to 4 steps. And I like 3 because 3 is a powerful number. Okay? So then the half-halt is the doorway through which we make every change of bend, of balance, of gait, of movement, and of pace. It's not just a means to the end, you guys. It's actually, when we're trained riders, and we've done this for many, many years, we realize that it's what we train the horse to try to perfect year after year after year with all the horses we ride. It's the end in itself. Because if we can produce perfect half-halts in a horse, in other words, we can always have a perfect state of balance and attention, thereby owning their rhythm. Do you know what the rhythm is in the horse? What is it? The speed of their footfalls in the gait. So how fast or how slow they put their feet down in how many beats are in the walk? How many beats are in the trot? How many beats are in the canter? Exactly. The speed with which they put those feet down, pick them up and put them down, is the rhythm of the horse's gait. And then if you can own through these half halts the tempo of the horse, what's that? You guys know? So, yeah? That's exactly right. So how fast you're going along inside of that gate over every meter of ground. So it's really closely related to the rhythm, isn't it? Because you can speed up or slow down the tempo of the horse too. They're different, but they're connected very much to each other, those two things. And then you can also control the frame of the horse. How high the frame is, how low the frame is, how long the frame is, how short the frame is. Okay? And then the fourth thing that you control is the length of their stride. How long the stride is, how short the stride is. And you guys get that if you can control all of those things from half halt to half halt, you basically own everything. If you can create a perfect state of balance and attention all the time, what else could there be than a perfect state of balance and attention? And of course, we're always seeking perfect, aren't we? And in seeking perfect, we may know we'll never arrive at consistent, constant, perfect, but that's the surest way of finding excellence, is to reach for perfect, all right? So in the end, what I want you guys to really understand is that this right here, this last now 50 minutes, Kerrigan, you can go if you need to go get your horse ready, is, and you'll be teaching this next year from beginning to end. Even if you're not in you're gonna come as my speaker for this no matter what. So have it down to a science. I'd get the video. So what I want you to understand is that these basic principles and this last 50 minutes is the whole thing. You know, now we'll teach, and all the trainers will teach. Lennon goes and teaches all these kids every day, all the time. And the thing is, what we're trying to instill in you is this one lesson of the basic principles. If you really are almost religious about the use of them, if you truly understand them, then it makes for a whole different adventure in riding. And you're constantly being brought back to what is the truth in this situation. Are you, horse, are you aware? Are you listening to the driving aids properly? Are you listening to the bending aids properly? Are you straight? Are you then, what is the half halt? What's the quality of each half halt working like? Do you guys have any questions about this? There should be at least one. Yeah.
Double check the speed of the footfall and the rhythm can be called the tempo.
The rhythm can't be called the tempo. The speed that the horse is going inside of each gait. So the tempo of a trot, if you want to pick up the tempo of the trot, that means you're going to cover the next meters of ground faster than you were before. That's picking up the tempo of the horse. Pick up the tempo. Go faster over each meter of ground. That's different than the rhythm of this walk is too close to lateral. It's too close to 2 beat. So we have to break it up better into becoming more 4 beat. That's the rhythm of the horse. You see? Got it? Okay. More questions? Any other questions? I would have a million. Yeah, go ahead.
What were the differences between the upper leg compared to the lower?
That's such a good question. Okay, that's a really good question. So, and I'm glad you brought it up. The upper leg versus the lower leg. Because we said we're using the legs, seat, and reins, right? So, if you were on what's your horse's name? Blue? Okay, you're on Blue. And Blue's right here, and he takes the bit suddenly, gets scared, takes the bit in his teeth, and goes running towards the other end of the arena. Do you think you're going to be in a passive seat when that happens? Probably not. Do you think you're going to be in an active driving seat? I'm so glad you brought this up. Okay, so you are going to most probably have taken in a big deep breath when that happened and tightened all the muscles in your seat, right? And that's called the braced or the stilled seat. You remember I said that? It's the braced seat. But it's doing at that moment what's called sitting against the motion of the horse, sitting against the forward motion of the horse. Whoa! And at that same second, would you be passive in your legs? With your legs on the horse? Would you just be totally relaxed, do you think, with your legs like that when the horse is running away? Probably not. Would you want, though, to be driving him forward with your legs? No. But again, you would be braced with your thigh and your knee while you're bracing your seat against the motion of the horse. You'd be driving into the saddle, but you'd be using the upper part of your leg. And it is the upper part of your leg and the stilled brace seat that brings the horse from greater to lesser than. So for instance, within you go extended canter, collected canter. In general, you'll be at the end of the extended canter sitting against the motion of the horse, driving but more with the upper leg than the lower leg. And that keeps also the back of the horse high up underneath you, because if you drive down, many times they'll hollow their back. So transition from canter to trot would be brace seat, sit, breathe in, still your seat, close more upper leg, the horse comes and close your fist just enough to bring the horse through that half halt to the trot from the canter, and then relaxing the upper leg, relaxing that stilled seat, the horse goes through the transition. It's still leg, seat, and hand, but what you brought up, and I'm so glad you did, is the qualitative difference, how you do it from the upper leg versus the lower driving leg, okay? So good that you asked that, thank you. Any other questions? See how good questions can be, yeah?
So in the perfect state of balance, is that collection within the gait, or can you have a perfectly balanced working trot extended trot?
You can have a perfectly balanced long and low, like in a baby horse when they're stretching to the ground. And you know, when you see a horse that's trotting along in the field and their head and neck is down by the ground and they're just going along like this, they're perfectly balanced for what they're doing, right? So the idea would be, though, that as you go up in the horse's training scale, up in their education, we go from the beginning, that long low, where the horse is balanced, stretching down, and then we go to the working gaits, where the horse is balanced for the level that they're at, and then we say, now I want you to come to more engagement, the center of gravity even more back, the front end more elevated into what we called collection. And what is collection? When you say collection, what are we collecting? Okay, you're right. But in the end, what are we actually collecting? What do you think?
A, you're slowing everything down, but B, you're kind of pressing the horse smaller.
Okay, sort of, except that collection isn't necessarily slower. Okay? So what do you think, though, when we really talk about collection? Because I said it at the very beginning of this lecture. I said that what it's all about. What did you say? Energy. We're collecting energy. We're collecting energy, so we create energy that comes from their two engines back here, their hind legs, from our seat and legs. We create energy. We trap that energy in the moment when we close our fists correctly, right, with our seat here, and we then direct that energy. We recirculate it so it's going around and around and around, and this makes that round shape, do you see? And we then direct that energy, say, into a half pass left, into flying changes, into a shoulder in. That's the direction of that energy from half halt to half halt, okay? Anybody else? Questions before we before we adjourn to start work? Throughout these days, you're going to hear the different trainers, throughout these next days, you're going to hear the trainers teaching all sorts of movements to the riders. Remember that what we're teaching is from half-halt to half-halt. The collection of energy, the trapping of that energy into the animal, with ourselves, and then the direction of that energy into each of these movements, each of these beautiful lessons that we call dressage. All right? Thanks, you guys. That was great. And so now remember, this is one of those things, this is one of those moments that if you're smart, you will remember that lecture, because that's the one that my trainer and Lyndon's trainer from years ago taught us, and it's one that stuck with me for all of these years, and it's been probably the greatest service to my riding career. Not probably, it has been. Okay? Okay, great.
I have a couple things.
Yeah. Okay.